Hey, Michael, what's going on over there?
Hey, Will, 1 or 2 bottles for the podcast today.
Can you make that 3?
Why do we need 3?
Because we are featuring a new winery.
Wow, that's outstanding. Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Know Texas Vino. This is Michael.
And this is Will.
Folks, today's podcast is sponsored by Texas Wine Club and
Texas Wine Lover app. So grab a glass and join us for a new and intriguing episode.
What a beautiful trip out here, wasn't it, Will?
Man, it was really nice out here.
Yeah.
And pulling in, they said they got a bunch of rain last night.
Oh, like 2 inches of rain last night?
Yeah, I didn't get nothing.
Wow.
I turned the water hose on.
Yeah, the water hose. I'm actually watering my lawn as we speak right now. But yeah, so they got some water, but it's gorgeous. All the cattle and the horses, and it's just a beautiful, not only a farming community, but obviously a great vineyard and winery up here as well. So we're excited to be here.
You know, the minute you pull in, you see a bunch of vines out there, and actually their vine, what's the actual terminology for a person who clips the vines? Is that vineyard or a vintner?
Yes, a vineyard.
A vineyard. Well, the actual person. What's the
viticultural?
Viticultural.
Yes.
Ooh, there's a big word. Yeah. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're here with We Know Texas Vino, and we're in a beautiful location in North Texas, I should say. And I'm Michael, by the way.
And this is Will.
And we're here today at Eden Hill Winery and Vineyard, and we're going to have a great time with a young gentleman named Chris, who is part of the family legacy here. We're going to have a wonderful time, and it's just wonderful. And so we're here. We've had 20 episodes, Will, which is incredible. Did you ever think we'd reach that?
I didn't think we would reach it like we did.
Yes.
I thought maybe it'd been something a little bit longer out, but man, we've done it so fast, and it just seems like yesterday we started doing this.
I know, it's incredible. And so I sent you a text today going, how did we make 20, right? How did we actually make that happen? We're here, episode 21 now, and we're going to have a wonderful time. And we're actually in a beautiful room right now with barrels. I told Will earlier that I get kind of goosebumpy and fun when I'm sitting around a bunch of barrels of wine. So it's a beautiful thing, because unlike Will, I've been drinking wine for a long time, so I have a great appreciation. But Chris, great to have you here, and welcome to We Know Texas Vino, and we're pumped to have you here.
Thank you guys so much. I'm very honored for Eden Hill to be your 20th episode.
That 21st, actually.
21st.
21st. That's right.
So you're counting this one the 21st.
And we're drinking a really nice wine. In fact, Will and I both just had this really fun expression, almost a response, right, when we both tasted. So, Chris, what are we drinking real quick?
We're drinking our estate rosé Tempranillo. This is a Tempranillo that we make from our estate vineyard here in Salina.
Nice.
And we wanted to do a traditional rosé. And last year, we had just enough grapes to pull that off.
Nice.
So we took half of our Tempranillo vineyard, we took those grapes, and we whole cluster pressed them, and we made this beautiful, lightly dry, very crisp, clean rosé from those Tempranillo grapes.
Well, he described that perfectly. It is as crisp and as clean as, I just took a picture of it, probably put it on our Facebook account, but it is really outstanding. You guys did a great job with that. What a nice treat.
I will say it has a beautiful golden red color.
Yes, that's very difficult to do with a rosé. So when you go to the grocery store, what you may not know, this is kind of interesting.
There we go. Let's go for it. Yeah, we're in.
Is some of the rosés actually use food coloring.
Well, I actually heard that a lot of them use in the reds. I didn't know they did in the rosés.
That happens sometimes as well. So when you go to the grocery store and you're looking at rosés, you're going to see rosés in all kinds of colors. Mm-hmm. And that depends a lot on how the winemaker processed those grapes when he was doing the rosé, whether it was a blend or whether it was a Saunier, which is called bleeding the wine, which we can talk about later, or whether they did a whole cluster press on the grapes. And then there's kind of the occasional rosé where they use food coloring to give it a darker pink color.
Well, we've learned on this podcast, so that is actually new to me.
Is that kind of like that? What was that magic magician back in the 90s that didn't want to tell everybody the secrets about magic, and all of a sudden he starts telling it.
He got exposed.
He got exposed.
So is that what we're doing here, exposing all the winemakers?
Yeah, people are shuddering right now as we expose them what they're doing.
It's always good to know where your wine comes from.
Right.
That's like the rest of your food. And I'm a huge foodie. I love to cook.
Yes.
Okay.
So my friends always ask me, they would say, so Chris, I'm going to go to a party and I don't know what to bring because I don't know what people are cooking. What can I bring? There's 2 wines you can always bring to any party that goes with anything they've got. A sparkling wine and a rosé.
Yep.
Okay.
The thing about rosés is that you want to know what type of rosé you're going to get. I know that in America, a lot of rosés are seen as being sweet wines, but typically in Europe, rosés are dry wines. As a matter of fact, in Provence, just about all they drink is a nice, dry, lean rosé.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think Will and I both prefer the dry. That's why I think we're so intrigued by this. Yes. It was such a great taste.
Yeah. Me too. So when we decided to take half of our vintage last year and turn it into rosé, I told Mom and Dad, I would like to make this the way that the French make it.
Nice.
The French are some of the best producers of rosé in the world. Their wines, their rosés are dry. Their rosés are very light in color. And that's because they whole cluster press those grapes.
Whole cluster press. There you go.
I like that.
Amazing.
I like that term.
It's a little bit, in a way, masochistic because to make a whole cluster pressed rosé, you have to take the best red fruit you've got.
Okay.
You harvest that fruit, put it right into your press, and you immediately start pressing. So that juice maybe spends maybe 2 or 3 hours in contact with the skins in the press.
Interesting.
Then you draw that juice off into your fermentation tank, and then the way the French would do it is they would then either compost the skins that are left,
Okay.
the skins, the pulp, and the stems. Sometimes they might send that off to a distillery, possibly. But they would basically take the juice and just ferment the juice and leave the skins behind.
Interesting.
And so for a lot of wineries, when you think about making a rosé that way, which in my opinion is the best way to make a rosé,
Okay.
I'm just going to put myself out there.
I think you're proving yourself
Yes.
correct.
All right. I feel like the best fermentation process for a great rosé is whole cluster pressed.
Beautiful.
But it is very difficult to do it that way because you do have to sacrifice so much of your premium red fruit
Right.
that you could be turning into a very rich, full-bodied red
Right.
wine if you let it hang longer in the vineyard.
Interesting.
So a winemaker has to make a choice early on before that vintage begins. How am I going to make this rosé? Because then you have to go out to your block and say, okay, this block of my vineyard, I'm going to whole cluster press that block. And the rest of the vineyard I'm going to leave as my estate red, which is what we did last year. So we took our rosé grapes about 2 weeks before we took our estate red grapes, and we split the block into two pieces. The first piece was the rosé. The second piece was our estate red.
Okay.
But you have to make that choice.
That's a sacrifice.
It's a sacrifice. So a lot of wineries, and I understand, I mean, they look at that sacrifice and they go, well, I don't know.
Right.
I can earn top dollar for my estate red. Rosés are much more approachable in price. Am I able to accommodate that?
It's a big decision. I get it.
is.
And so, we're going to talk about your family and the legacy, that sort of thing, but you made a major decision on that. And how did your family react to it? Were they like, Chris, you've lost your mind because we can make something happen over here? Or were they very encouraged by your creativity?
They were very encouraged. As a matter of fact, Mom and Dad said, going forward, let's see if we can reserve a block of our grapes to make this rosé again.
Wow.
This rosé is very rare because it is a whole cluster pressed rosé, grown in a North Texas vineyard and then taken right into that winery 50 feet away.
Wow.
That is extremely rare in North Texas.
I was going to say, that's so awesome.
So we can kind of talk more about how other styles of rosé are made, or we can take the discussion in a different
that's going to be like this special educational thing, because I think we're kind of blessed to be here today with this gentleman who actually knows how to do this professionally.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is kind of talk about some of the other things that are so attractive about this amazing vineyard winery and this business model. But we will definitely touch on that during our educational portion because we have the man here. This is the man.
This is the man.
Yeah, so we found him. Well, real quick, so we're in Salina. Is that pronounced correctly?
Yeah, Salina. So
Texas.
when I first moved out here, I said it was Salina.
I know.
And then this guy with a big cowboy hat passes me on the street. And he goes, no, it's Salina.
Is that how he says? Salina. Yeah.
Right.
And so I think I pronounced it Salina the first time I was here. I was out just being a trailblazer a couple years ago and bumped into this beautiful location. I found that high school, which is like a cathedral out down there. And I was just so impressed. But what is the attractiveness about this area with you in particular, your business model? Is the soil what you need? I mean, what is going on here? And how long have you guys had this property?
There's several wonderful things that make Salina very attractive to plant grapes, wine grapes especially.
Okay.
It's further away from the Red River, where you're not going to get the extreme freezes that you might get when you're that close to Oklahoma.
Right.
But it's not so close to Central Texas or even Dallas that you're going to get more heat or humidity. Salina is in this very beautiful kind of narrow band of temperature zones right here, like I said, between the Red River and Dallas. So it's one of the best places to grow wine grapes in North Texas.
Okay.
Because of that kind of narrower temperature band. Also, the soil in Salina is not all the time black gumbo.
Okay.
It actually is a mix. We actually have in our vineyard outside clay loam over limestone bedrock.
Oh.
So what that allows us to do is get good drainage because of the limestone. The limestone is porous.
Yep.
And the water falls right through that.
So perfect.
But the clay loam will hold on to the water enough for us to get the water that we need for a good growing season.
Oh.
If it's all clay all the time, then the water will hold in the soil. If it's all sand, then the water is going to go straight through.
Right.
So Salina is a wonderful place to grow the grapes because its topography and its temperature range make it very viable for wine grape growing.
And was that the reason your family originally kind of created this here? I think 2007, did I do my research properly there?
Yes, we had a pretty wild idea. So back in 2002, I was looking for a place to farm a vineyard. And I drove all over North Texas, and I found a beautiful hilltop here in Salina, and I purchased that land. And then I told Mom and Dad, I said, you know what? If you'd like to be in the wine business with me, I have found a winemaking college north of Salina in Denison at Grayson, the TV Munson Viticulture and Enology School, part of the Grayson College system. And I would like to plant a vineyard and make wine. Would you like to come up and make wine with me? And at that time, Mom and Dad were living in Plano.
Oh, they were playing. Okay. All right.
And they said, yes, let's do it. So they came up to Salina, and they found the property we're sitting here on right now, where the winery is actually at. And this property is a little closer to Preston Road than my farm. It's a little better access to Preston Road. And it's a beautiful 10 acres. It had the great soil that we found for the vineyard. And we said, this is perfect. This is wonderful. And my mom said, this is where we're going to plant our Eden, where we're going to grow our Eden.
Yeah, right.
And that's
Found
where
our
the name
Eden.
of the winery came from.
It was one of my questions. I don't know if you looked online, but
Yes.
that was a great question. Actually, I do this a lot, and I'm a big researcher, and I love to be organized and prepared. I wrote some quotes down we'll talk about here in a minute, but one of them was that she's like, we had found our Eden, because she just knew. There was something instinctual there that she just knew that was it.
Yeah, it's a perfect name, I think, for the spot and for what Mom and Dad and I wanted to create.
You know, it's always fascinating when we talk to the different wineries, how they come up with their names and stuff like that. And it's just fascinating. I love stories like that.
Yeah. And so the family name is Clark and Linda. Those are your parents, correct? We want to give a shout out to them for sure. We actually met Clark.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
Yep. Your mom and dad. Yeah, shout out to Mom and Dad. And last name is Hornbaker. Is that correct?
Hornbaker, yes.
Okay, that's unique. I don't know if I've ever heard that last name. I was going to ask if that was German or something. I have a German name as well. Last name Woods, right? Woods. Wood.
It's funny. We're mostly Scotch-Irish with a little bit of French and Norwegian thrown in.
Okay, I see it. I see it.
But then somewhere along the way, a little German kind of snuck in.
That's beautiful.
Then Hornbaker became the last name.
Yeah.
We're also in it's a whole family winery. So
yes.
My sister Wendy and my brother-in-law Chanaka are also with us in the winery.
That's great.
And they live in Austin.
Oh.
I grew up in Austin, actually, and I do love Austin, but I really enjoy being in Salina and being up here in North Texas.
I can tell. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have a pleasure of interviewing you today, and I know your whole family's involved in this, and I wrote that down. I read a quote here real quick. Do you mind if I do this real quick, Will?
Sure.
I love this quote real quick. And it says, our story is rooted in the great vineyards of Texas. Our family has followed our passion, there's that word again, for winemaking in the Lone Star State. That's Clark Hornbaker. I wrote down the word passion. So you guys, you and your family, you obviously had some sort of a bug. You caught something that got you inspired to move this way. And then your family followed you a little bit with your inspiration, your dream, your goals. Is that kind of how that all worked out?
That's how it went.
And now he talks about passion. They got the bug, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
So tell me about that. What's this family doing, and how does it all look?
So let's actually step back before we talk about their bug. How did you get the bug?
That's a great story. So I had always loved
That's
wine.
why we're here.
And before I was a winemaker, I was in marketing, and I traveled the world. And I was having all these great wines from around the world. And like I said, I'm a huge foodie, love to cook. And I love for all of my ingredients to come from local sources. So I was cooking, and I was making these dinners from everything I could find in North Texas, but the wine on the table was always French, or it was California wine, maybe some nice, South American wines, things like that. And I thought to myself, why can I not make everything on the table from Texas? Can't the wine also be from Texas? And so one of my friends gave me a winemaking kit just to experiment with. And one night I was out of my backyard, and this was before I'd signed up to go to Grayson College for winemaking. And there was a pear tree in my backyard that I had planted a long time ago, and it was full of pears. It was an actual orchard tree. And so about 2 o'clock in the morning, I went out of my backyard and I got all these pears off this pear tree. And I said, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to make a wine, you know. And so I took this wine kit, I took my fresh pears and came up with a recipe for the pear wine. And I made my first wine. So my first wine was actually a fruit wine, a pear wine.
Pears, out of pears.
Perry.
Yeah, Perry's actually, turns out, a fairly famous wine in the UK, in England.
Is it
Really?
called pronounced Perry, though, right? Perry? Or is
just
that
Perry.
Perry, okay.
Yeah.
Not Perry like it's France or Paris, France.
No,
No,
that's
it's not
Perry. That's
Perry,
Perry.
yeah.
That's it. Oh, but, yeah. No, I want to say, parlez-vous français? Is that parlez-vous anglais?
That's right. You say it like Solana, it's more like Perry. Right? Perry wine.
Perry.
So I loved just the process and learning about the process of making that wine. And that got me really going. And I went to the wine college, and just this whole world opened up to me. I had always wondered, how is wine made, and why do so many wines taste different from each other? How are the vineyards grown? How is the wine processed? How do you age it in barrels? And going to that school in Grayson just shocked me. It shocked me about the history of Texas wine. It shocked me about the history of growing grapes in Texas. The first vineyard ever planted in what would later become the continental United States was actually in Texas.
We've read that before, yes. That's amazing.
I learned about T.V. Munson and how he helped to save the world's grapevines by grafting them onto Texas rootstock. I was just blown away at the crossroads between Texas and winemaking.
The history, right?
The history of it.
Like, almost like archaeology. He's digging into the
Yes.
like what's happening, yeah.
And so this really encouraged me to go full on into winemaking and grape growing with mom and dad. We started making wine in my kitchen.
That's amazing.
And pretty soon we were making wine as a family, and I was still working my marketing job at the time. So on the weekends, I was like the midnight winemaker for the family.
Right.
So we started to plant our vineyard in 2006. And at that point, when you start to plant a vineyard and you decide to make a winery, you have a big choice that you have to make.
What is
And
that
that choice is, where are you going to get your grapes? You can make wine from anything. I've made wine from pears.
That's right.
I've had dandelion wine.
Oh, I've had that before.
A good dandelion wine is something to really
That's big
enjoy.
up in Alaska. I don't know if you know that. In Alaska, some of the winemakers up there, they do the blueberries and the dandelion and the rhubarb wines.
I actually just found out the other day you can make wine from grass.
Oh,
Yes,
probably.
you can.
I'm sitting there thinking to myself, that's a lot of grass I'm going to have. And when I say grass, people, I don't mean weed, okay? I'm talking about grass.
Right, right.
Yeah, any vegetable you can add sugar to, you can make.
There you go.
Big wine.
I was just shocked about that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a bottle of wine. It's called grass.
Grass wine. Oh, my gosh. You might get in trouble. I guarantee you some government official showing up to your doorsteps.
What variety? Would it be Bermuda or would
there
it
you go.
be St.
Good-
Augustine?
Alfalfa.
Alfalfa. Okay, he's going to just lean
And
into
then I'm going
it.
to put his picture on the front of it.
Well, we have a winemaker, so you knew that question was coming out.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
way too specific. That's beautiful.
So we said, yes, the biggest choice you're going to make is your grapes.
Yeah.
And at that point, mom is she's from California. She was born in San Jose. And so she grew up traveling through Napa and Sonoma with all the orchards and the nut trees and the vineyards.
It's beautiful.
And like I said, I've always wanted to make my ingredients from locally grown things that I could find here in North Texas. So we made a very brave choice. We said, we are only going to make wine from grapes from Texas.
That is awesome.
And my teachers, they encouraged me when they found out about that at Grayson. They said, that's fantastic, Chris, because Texas is basically a brand new grape growing region. Now, I need to put some caveats to that. Texas, the wine industry was kind of restarted in the 1970s. And there are incredible people that helped to get the vineyards growing again in Texas. There was like Dr. Bobby Smith.
We've heard that name once or twice.
Out of Fort Worth in Springtown.
Okay, Springtown.
He recently passed, but
Bushy Creek, right?
Yeah. No, that's a different.
Okay.
Different person, but Dr. Bobby Smith is actually one of the people that went to the Texas Congress to get the laws changed so that we could have a tasting room.
Wow, that's
so
huge.
There's just Les Constable is the person
there you go,
from
Constable.
Bushy
That's
Creek.
right. Yeah.
Les Constable, also a wonderful man.
Okay, that's who I was thinking of.
Yes. And so there's been so many great people that have helped to get the grape industry and the winemaking industry started again in Texas. And so in a way, I'm kind of standing on the shoulders of some Texas giants.
Yeah.
But when we made that decision to grow grapes only from Texas, my teacher said, if you're going to do that, there's some certain things you need to look for. You're going to want to look for hot climate grapes. Grapes grown obviously in warm climates like Spain, southern Italy, southern France. Grapes that can take the heat. Grapes that are late budding, so you can get past the freezes, the late spring freezes. Maybe grapes that have a shorter growing season, so that by the time the big, August, September, summertime heat gets to you, they've already ripened and you can get them off the vine, so you don't lose too much of your acidity in the grapes.
Right.
And then your winemaking techniques need to reflect that as well. We're going to have a bit higher pH in Texas because we're a hotter climate.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to need to be doing a fair amount of blending in your winery. Blending different grapes, different varietals with different textures and pHs together to really achieve that balance that you need to have in your wine. And when they told me that, I said, I'm all in. Let's do it. And so they really helped us to pick grapes that are wonderful for our climate. Grapes like Tempranillo and Tannat. Those are Spanish and Italian varietals.
Right.
Albarino is a wonderful white grape from Spain to grow here. It does wonderfully in the heat. You can do things like Petit Verdot and Petit Syrah, surprisingly. Those are typically unevenly ripened grapes in France, but in Texas, because of our heat, they ripen fully, and they get like caviar on the vine.
Really?
Small, very dense, intense fruit.
Like caviar. What an interesting description.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And they're red too, right?
They're red,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm being funny because caviar is red and...
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So by doing those different grape varietals, you can grow grapes only from Texas. So you just have to respect the region and the climate that you're in.
Absolutely.
And if you do that, then you're off and running.
Right.
Well, it's a valuable lesson, isn't it?
Right.
Even for you, you're kind of growing some stuff in the backyard, but you have to really honor that and honor Mother Nature and make sure you're in the right category.
Yep. And basically the one word you got to say is terroir.
Terroir, yes.
Terroir.
Yeah.
Looking at the different regions and what kind of grapes are suggested to grow in different parts, my folks are over in East Texas, and so it's very watery and very humid because of the swampy waters and all like that. So we got to look at what we're trying to plant out there as well.
Right.
So I know we're going to do some Blanc de Bois out there.
That would be perfect, yes.
Yeah.
There's actually lots of Blanc de Bois planted in Louisiana now.
Yep.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
So close by.
Yep.
East Texas.
Recognize your region, know what you're doing,
Yep.
get some education, and make sure you ask people who have fruit on the tree so that you can get some advice from some, professionals.
So some even things I actually read about it is if you want a specific grape to grow in a specific region, you get rootstock and you graft them together for what you want. So, I thought that was pretty interesting. So if I want, Tempranillo out in East Texas, which might be a stupid idea to do it, but if you take the rootstock from Blanc de Bois and put it on there, it should grow.
Yes, the rootstock is very important. So we have a fantastic resource here in Texas, Texas A&M.
Yep. What's his name? Michael Cook.
Yes, Michael Cook. Yes, he's our extension agent here in North Texas. And they have a wonderful program there where you can actually take your soil from your future vineyard site, send that to Texas A&M, they'll test it, and they will actually help you identify which rootstock to plant in that vineyard to then graft your wine grapes onto.
That's
what a great
interesting.
resource. That's amazing. Yeah, that's fantastic, especially for the newest winemakers, right? They're trying to get into the industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. That part I did not know.
No, me either.
Yes,
I knew you take the soil and send it off to them, and they'll tell you, okay, this is what you can grow, and this is what you need to put in the soil, and that kind of stuff. But I did not know that part.
They're becoming much more involved now in the winemaking and grape growing industries. So both Texas A&M and Texas Tech are working on their 4-year degree programs for winemaking and grape growing. And that's going to just cause a huge boom in winemaking in Texas.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Before they did that, when I was going to Grayson, there were no 4-year degree programs in Texas because Texas still did not have any laws that allowed people under the age of 21 to drink wine if they were going through college through a college program. When you think about it, it's a small thing, but it means a huge amount to the industry.
Right.
Because in California, they had changed that law decades ago.
Right.
Yep.
So you leave high school, you're 18, you're a freshman, college freshman. How do you go through the winemaking program if you
can't taste the wines and learn?
What I actually thought was I'm 18. I want to drink. Let's go take a wine making class.
Oh, well, there's probably a small percentage of people who do that for sure. But hopefully,
And then they get it. Then they say, you know what? I'm really liking wine. Let's actually do this.
I believe in society, so I believe there's more Chris's in the world who are pursuing that than people who just want to get lit, right?
Much more honest.
Yeah.
Yes, much more honest students for that.
Cool. Let's talk about your family real quick and what you have here. So we're in a beautiful estate here, and I wrote down that you have two different. You have Eden Hill Estate. Is that where we are right now? Is that correct?
Yes, that's our estate winery, estate vineyard.
Beautiful. And then Eden Hill Loft. And tell me about that real quick. What is that?
Yeah, so that's down in Dallas at the Dallas Farmers Market.
Beautiful.
The downtown Dallas area has just gone through a huge renovation.
Yep.
And it's changing every day. It's actually becoming a living city again, where you live in downtown Dallas and you walk to the farmers market or you walk to your restaurants, and there's all kinds of entertainment venues now there as well. So as well, they're going to be probably building a park over Interstate 30, just like they did with Clyde Warren Park over Waddle Rogers Freeway, to turn all of downtown Dallas into a giant walking city.
Yes.
And so downtown Dallas is the heart of North Texas. It still is.
Yep.
I love Fort Worth. I love you guys out there in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I love Fort Worth as well.
But Big D is still a big heartbeat
Big
there
D,
for North Texas. And it's kind of the center focus there of the region. And so when we went down to the Dallas Farmers Market, we discovered this huge customer gathering area where people are just out there buying fresh fruits and vegetables. They're drinking different beverages there. The farmers market is this beautifully well done place.
It is.
And so we said, you know what? We would like to bring our wines closer to downtown Dallas and introduce people in downtown Dallas to our wines. We thought, you know what? The Dallas Farmers Market's the perfect place to do that. So we opened a satellite tasting room up in downtown Dallas at the farmers market.
I'm actually saying, have you been down there at all, Will? That's pretty cool. That's pretty amazing.
I have not been down there. I honestly, I try to stay away from Dallas.
Were you just listening to Chris?
So much. If I go to East Texas to my folks' house, I usually go like 45 minutes out of the way,
to avoid
so I don't
that.
have to go to Dallas.
Yeah. Well, I've been there, and Eric and I, my wife and I, both been there a couple times. It is really a festive area, and I've actually, now that I recall, I think I remember seeing your guys' tasting room down there, and it's just a great location, and it's perfect. You guys did a great job. It's almost a vision. You almost cast that vision of knowing that there was going to be growth down there.
Yeah, it's extreme growth actually happening there right now.
That's
so we're
amazing.
very happy to be at the farmers
super
market.
smart.
Well, and I've heard that, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be talking about this incorrectly, that, you know, if you want to serve certain type of alcohol in a certain building, you got to have a certain permit from Dallas to do it. Like I believe if you want to do like hard alcohol in one building, but your license actually allows you to only do wine, you can't do hard alcohol because your other license only allows wine.
Yeah, that's correct. That's the alcohol licensing system in Texas.
Okay.
So what Eden Hill is we're considered a manufacturer. That gives us a G license. Forgive me if I'm getting technical with your viewers.
No, I'm writing
fine.
notes, actually, the G license.
And forgive me any JBC agents that are out there listening to the podcast as well. So what it means is a G license, for instance, we can distill wine at Eden Hill to make port, because port is obviously considered a wine. That's carried under the G license.
Okay.
But if I want to go and say make whiskey and actually sell whiskey or make vodka or like a heavy spirit, then I need to go get like a second license for that.
Okay.
Same thing is, if I wanted to become a brewer, you can't have those two licenses intermingled, so to speak. I'm very much simplifying things right now.
But that makes sense. I mean, that makes sense to us and to our listeners, I'm sure. But that makes a lot of sense.
So sometimes you might, if you open up a winery, sometimes you'll have people come in through your door and say, I want to have a party here. Can I bring a case of beer and a bottle of whiskey and also purchase your wine? And the answer is no.
I'm sorry. That's not happening.
No, that's outside alcohol. So you
Right, exactly.
But that's the licensing system in Texas. And
Gotcha.
that really is the result of more or less the end of Prohibition.
Okay.
At the end of Prohibition, to repeal the amendment from the Constitution, the country went ahead and said, okay, we'll repeal that amendment, but we're going to let the states handle alcohol to themselves.
Right.
And that means that each state then has its own version of its own alcohol laws.
Right.
I don't really know what the licensing is like in, say, California versus Texas, or even New Mexico versus Texas, but that's how Texas is laid out.
There you go.
So here's some useless information for you.
Sure.
Useless.
So, I love useless information.
Down in Key West, there's a rum place down there called Last Legal Rum Distillery. And they're they're still actually under prohibition laws down there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They can't ship it out. They can't do anything. If you want it, you have to come down there and actually buy it from them.
Okay. So that's how Key West and Florida decided to handle that.
Yep.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
There's actually some states in the country that I cannot ship directly to. Like I cannot ship directly to Oklahoma.
To Oklahoma.
Right.
Wow.
I know I think there's 7 states if I did my research, but I don't remember Oklahoma. That is an amazing stat right there.
You know,
That's
what's
right next door.
interesting is actually, so I'm working in Oklahoma right now, and I actually was looking for wineries up there, and I don't see very many wineries up there.
Yes. Right.
But I mean, my listeners, I'm not going to drink Oklahoma wine, okay?
I love Oklahoma. It's a
Don't
great
throw
state.
the Oklahomas under the bus there, big guy.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's awesome. So your family, hardworking. So Chris, what does your day look like? I mean, you're the winemaker, you're the owner, and then you also just have a great relationship with, I'm sure, the people who frequent right here at the estate. But I wrote something down here, and this is, again, just a quote. I rarely do this, actually, but your website was really well done. When everyone's in the pool in the summer, we're working on our farmer's tan. Yeah, and I wrote that one down of all of them.
Hey, that's a true one right there.
That's an ownership mantra, isn't it? And so, what does your day look like, Chris? You have your own farm, and it's part of the whole package. But I mean, what does a day look like? And I thought you were going this directional earlier when you're saying when you have to make a choice, and it went into where are you getting your grapes from? But do you also have to make a choice when you become what you are, which is owner, winemaker, entrepreneur, about your lifestyle? What does your day look like, Chris?
My day is all over the place. It's like a merry-go-round. So 1 minute we're making wine, we're blending wine, topping up barrels. The next minute we're doing marketing. The next minute we're out in the vineyard pruning, taking vines off, shoot thinning. After that, we might be down in the tasting rooms pouring wine for customers. We might be doing wine dinners at restaurants. I might actually be delivering wine to customers sometimes. We actually did quite a lot of that during the pandemic. When you're a winemaker, you're a glorified janitor.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a plumber, an electrician, a janitor. You're in marketing and advertising. You're a madman, so to speak.
Right.
Marketing and advertising. You have to be a jack of all trades.
Very good.
So
Jack
that's
of all
what
trades,
I am
master of
actually.
none.
That's what my lifestyle is like right now, jack of all trades.
Right.
It's funny. I think that a lot of people assume that winemakers spend their day dressed up in linen shirts,
Right.
walking through their vineyards with a full glass of wine.
Smelling grapes on the vine and fixing their collar and their eyeglasses and
Got the little white hats on.
the way they walk is extremely unique. They kind of
Very
walk
pretentious style.
Not the case.
No, what they don't see is when your tractor runs out of diesel and you got to walk back to the barn to get your diesel can.
I love it.
I know about that one.
They don't see all the bumps and bruises and the scrapes you get into.
Yes.
Coming in and out of the wine tanks. And
Yep.
I love
there
it.
was actually, do you remember that TV show? I think it was on the History Channel. It was called Dirty Jobs.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
remember it.
Yes.
There was an episode where he did winemaking for a day.
I did not see that
He
one.
that'd
got
be
into
cool.
tanks. He was He was scooping grapes out of tanks.
I love it.
He was getting down and dirty, cleaning barrels and cleaning the pumps and scrubbing the floor. That's what I mean by a winemaker being like I guess you could like a high-priced janitor.
Right.
You know?
And it was showcased on the show called Dirty Jobs, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
such a good show. In fact, I actually watched one recently where he actually carved in a tank to clean glue out.
Glue out of a tank.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
That one was a good episode.
Yeah. Sometimes grape skins can stick to tank walls like glue when you're in there for hours trying to get it out. But so for us, for here at Eden Hill, we do everything by hand. It's the family makes the wine. We make the wine. We grow the grapes here. We partner with grape growers in the Texas High Plains.
Mm-hmm.
We bring that fruit in. We make the wine. We ferment. We're bottling. We're aging the wine. We're doing the manual labor, the physical labor that comes
That's great.
with. And then we're also having to put our white collar shirt on and go into the tasting rooms and go to wine dinners and restaurants and introduce people to what Texas wine can be.
absolutely. Yeah.
And-
so it's never ending, right? It's just
Yeah,
never
it's never ending.
and that's something we've learned is
Yeah.
just that, if you commit to something, you got to commit to it.
You got to commit to winemaking.
It's all in. You can't be happy end.
It's just season after season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the harvest season that rolls into the barreling season. And then the bottling season is after that. Then you get back into the vineyard season again where you're pruning. And then you're going into the harvest season again after that. So
There isn't really, I mean, and Chris, you could probably help us. There's not really like this just 1 month off where he's just like, okay, this is the month by our calendar standards that we just get to take the month off. It seems like it's a
funny you
year-round
should say
gig.
that.
Oh, is there? Okay, well, I want to learn.
Because my goal ever since I became a winemaker was to do something I was never able to do even at my marketing job, and that was to take 1 full month off a year. So if it's possible for you as a winemaker to get everything done right, like the harvest is right,
Yeah,
and the
everything's
barreling
perfect.
goes down right, all the barrels show up when they're supposed to, the equipment doesn't break, the bottling line doesn't need repair.
I love it.
If everything works out perfectly, then you could take the month of February off.
Okay, there you go. There's some
There
information
you go.
for you.
Which
That's
is a
beautiful.
great month to take off in Texas because of our
Yes.
snowpocalypse and our icepocalypse.
The last couple, the last
Yes.
couple of Februarys has been
February.
horrible. But is there a stress? I mean, if you picture Chris taking off, he's now in Bolivia or he's over in Paris, and suddenly the freeze hits. Is there a nervousness that you're wondering how your crop is doing?
If I'm in Belize, no.
The Belize.
I'm not going to be nervous if I'm in Belize. If I'm down in Cozumel in February,
Very nice.
Yeah.
No worries.
if a freeze hits, a freeze hits.
I mean, what can you do while you're in Cozumel? Not a thing. You can just look at your video
There's
camera
really
like,
not a lot you can do. Like this February, we had a huge freeze here in North Texas.
Yeah.
And we must have had almost 6 inches to a foot of ice out here.
wow.
And there's not a heating system that you can build or develop that will stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
If an ice storm decides it's going to hang over your vineyard for a week at 4 degrees Fahrenheit, that's just it.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's when you trust in your rootstock
There you go.
and
Yep.
the grape varieties that you planted to pull through that
Beautiful.
when that freeze is over. And luckily, that's what we have here.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But so it hasn't happened to me yet, getting that February off.
Yeah. Okay.
But that is my plan.
You're working towards it, aren't you?
I'm working towards
That's
it.
the 2024 goal, huh?
Yes, it is.
There you go.
Maybe
Well, I
we can
hope
do a
you get-
podcast next February when I'm down in Cozumel.
There you go.
Hey,
That'd
you know
be
what?
cool.
Meet you
I tell
guys on
what,
the beach.
I was going to say, let's just go down to Cozumel all together and just do an episode down there.
Well, that's
a
if
great
Chris,
throw.
if
Yes.
Chris can get that time off. But we're rooting for you,
Might
buddy.
be drinking tequila instead
Yeah,
of
for
wine.
sure. That's too funny. Well, I know it's hard work for sure, but there's got to be some satisfaction. What would you say, Chris? And I don't ask this that often to folks, but is there something that's just extraordinarily satisfying about being in this industry?
Yes. What is incredible to me, what makes all the bumps and bruises and all the heartache worth it, is at the end of the day, you get to pour yourself a glass of wine that you made and you pour it for other people and you see the smile on their face. You see the joy it gives them and you see how happy it's making the people around the table. And you get to say, I did that. I made something that I guess it sounds silly. We've been making wine for over 10,000 years. And so you wouldn't think that it would be special or that special anymore when you make a good bottle of wine. But after all you go through during the year to take that bottle of wine and pull the cork out and pour that for people and you see people's faces light up when they smell it, when they taste it, when they drink it, and the party really gets started.
Because of you.
Yeah, that's an amazing feeling. When I was in college, my first degree was actually going to be voice. I spent a lot of time singing in the choir growing up as a kid. And so when I went to college for the first year and a half, I was in the voice department, and they were teaching me to sing on stage. And that was tough to do as well. You were endlessly practicing. You were always on the road. You were, you didn't see a lot of your friends very much because you were always in the music building trying to improve your voice. And so it was very difficult, but there was those moments when you would finally get out on stage and you would start singing, and you'd see the thrill that it gave to everyone in the audience. And so all that hard work made that one moment, worth it. Or that one moment made all that hard work worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the same feeling I get when I'm able to sit down with people and share a glass of wine like with you guys.
That's great.
After all the hard work of deciding how are we going to make this rosé, how long should we hang the grapes, what temperature should I ferment the rosé at? Is this rosé light enough? Is it too light? Is it too dry? Not too dry? Whatever. All the different steps you have to go through. For us just to sit here right now and have this glass of wine, that is what makes it all worth it.
I think that's really awesome.
It is.
Yeah, because you get some satisfaction.
Yeah.
I come from marketing as well as sports marketing, but when you set up a youth run and there's 1,500 kids with smiles on their faces running through the woods, right? There's just something really satisfying about it. I orchestrated that. I built that. I manufactured that. I created that, and then you put all the puzzle pieces together, and it turns out great. I think that's what you just described. And that is a super cool thing to be able to have that for folks.
Anytime you feel like you've done something with your hands, because I used to do. I used to print T-shirts years ago, and so printing T-shirts out for people who were doing fundraisers and stuff like that, and then hand it to them, and they get the shirt and they look at it like, oh my God, this is better than I thought it was going to be. You get that same feeling when it comes to doing wine, especially when you have this idea for a wine and you finally get it all together and stuff, and you have this idea for a way it's supposed to taste, and you get it and you taste it and you're like, oh yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's great.
Winemaking makes you feel like you're part of the history of humanity as well.
Well,
like I said,
that's
because
deep.
I know,
Sure, that's amazing.
Allow me to get a little deep right now.
That's really good.
I'm like one glass in, so I get a little deep.
that was awesome, though.
So wine and beer kept humanity alive for generations. You couldn't drink the water because it wasn't safe.
Right.
They didn't know why wine and beer kept you alive, but it did. And so when you make wine, and that wine it tastes great and it smells right, and everything's running with it correctly. You have that glass of wine in front of you and you're sharing it with people, and you just feel this huge connection to all those people that came before you, working as hard as they did to also make a glass of wine. It hasn't, I'm not sure that it's gotten any easier to make wine. I think in some ways it's gotten a bit more complex.
You're right.
So the work hasn't gotten any easier, but the joy you have from it, I have to think the joy that I have from making this wine was probably the same joy that those ancient Egyptians felt when you see the hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
Where they're making wine and they're putting the grapes into the press.
Yeah.
I see that hieroglyph and I go, okay, that was thousands and thousands of years ago.
Literally, right.
And yet sitting behind my winery right now is a grape press. And so you just feel this incredible connection to the past and to history and to all that hard work that everybody sacrificed for this grape, for this one fruit.
Yeah.
Isn't it incredible?
It is.
I mean, of all the fruits in the world, a grape has everything you need to make wine. It's got all the acid, it has all the sugar, it has all the flavor. As a matter of fact, if you don't do anything, Mother Nature will make the wine for you.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
true. That's
You
true.
may not like it.
Right.
Well, it's kind of funny. You
But
talked
it
about
does.
having hieroglyphics and you see the people making the wine and stuff. It's amazing the technology of winemaking and beer making and alcohol making over the years. Have gone to Cozumel a couple of times, and they have a tequila tasting room out there, and they actually have the old crusher for the blue agave. It's a big, huge stone wheel. and they sit there and they just have somebody that rolls it around all that agave, and they crush it all, get all that liquid out of that, and it goes down to a little bucket, as I guess we'll call it, a little bucket or a little bowl or whatever they used at the time. And you sit there and you look at it and you're like, wow, this is how they used to do it. Nowadays, we just put it in a machine and just crank down on it or hit a button for it.
Right.
They actually did it by hand, so you have to appreciate they're doing it much more than we do now.
Well, they literally paved the road for all the the winemakers now, but we just used a little more technology. But really, the art and the mastery and the beauty and the passion is still there, which is pretty cool. And we obviously, Chris, you're demonstrating that today. That's pretty amazing. But I think it's just wonderful when you find a passion. I think more people need to find a passion in this world. It doesn't have to be winemaking, but go find something you're passionate about and follow it aggressively and enthusiastically. You've obviously done that pretty well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, definitely. I would encourage people to find that passion and something that gives them a thrill.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Well, you have lots of wines here. So real quick, what are some of your award-winning wines? If you want to showcase those or brag about them a little bit, we're drinking a great one today. I'm certain you will if you have not already received an award for it. But is there something you're really proud of? And I know that your community here just really pumped up to share with you.
Yeah, I think what I'm most proud of is the fact that our vineyard right outside our door here is a double gold medal winning vineyard.
Wow,
there you go. Multiple vintages in a row.
That's beautiful.
Wow, that's awesome.
I know when we first planted this vineyard here, there was a pickup truck driving by, and he yells out the window at us, and he goes, "I wish you guys a barrel full of luck." And he just keeps driving.
Little sarcasm thrown out the window to a young winemaker, and it's just like another arrow in the heart.
You know what came to my mind is that you ever seen the movie Funny Farm? And that mailman coming at the very end, he's drunk, he just throws a mail out the window. That's what it reminds me of.
That's hilarious.
So I'm most proud of this vineyard here and the wines that we make from it for several reasons. One, being in North Texas means you are a pioneer. Everybody that's planted a vineyard in North Texas is still a pioneer.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
When Michael Cook comes up, he comes to all the vineyards here in North Texas, and we all share information with each other. We're part of what's called the North Texas Winery Association.
Right.
And it's an association of the wineries and vineyards here in North Texas. And we help each other out. We share equipment. We share tips and techniques, things like that. We're all pioneers. And so to have a vineyard outside our door that we planted back in 2006 to be an award-winning vineyard, just kind of like after we just kind of hit the ground running with it, is very special to me. It means so much because honestly, we have a lot of customers that will come into the tasting room and they won't assume that our wines are Texas wines. They'll assume that the wines are made from California grapes, or maybe that we brought wine in from California.
There's still a lot of education to do.
Yes.
So much education.
And so they'll be drinking our estate Tempranillo and go, this is wonderful Tempranillo. You know, I drink a lot of Tempranillos from Rioja or Del Toro or those kinds of regions. What part of the West Coast are you getting your Tempranillo from? What part of the Central Valley are you getting it, from? I'm like, no, it's from the vineyard. You drove past it. And they're like, what vineyard? And the vineyard, you just drove past it. So it's a thrill to be able to say to them, yes, the vineyard that's on the property is the one that made this wine you're enjoying.
That's right. That's great.
And it's a real testament actually to, like I said, everyone who came before us, to our teachers teaching us which rootstock and which grapes to plant, to people like Texas A&M helping us through the pruning season and with any type of diseases we might run into, all the way to my wine professors who taught us how to make wine and use the equipment that we use today. But the greatest thing about it, though, is that I planted it with my mom and dad.
That's awesome.
My sister, my brother-in-law. It's a family. And we planted it together. We prune it together. We harvest it together. We make the wine together. Even our wine club members come in and bottle the wine with us.
That would be fun.
Nice.
And that is probably the most meaningful wine that we make.
Okay.
The great news, of course, as well, I'm thrilled that it is a double gold medal winning vineyard. It won a double gold medal at Houston International. It won a double gold medal at San Francisco International. And when you translate that double gold into like a point score, a lot of people ask me to do that. That's between a 96 and a 98 point score for a wine.
A double gold.
As a matter of fact, San Francisco International does give you the point scores now when they give you those medals.
Interesting.
So to have a 96 to 98 point wine sitting right outside our door that we planted, being a pioneer, that has become the most meaningful.
Very, very impressive. Yeah, that's so awesome. And just the way you speak about it, it's almost that artistic way you speak about it. But I can tell this family is very, very just so proud of this accomplishment. And obviously it's going to continue on and on and on. Your sister, brother-in-law, and obviously your parents are amazing too. But it's just so cool.
Thank you. We're constantly trying to come up with new blends and try new grapes that we can find in Texas. And that's actually how the rosé came to be as well. We wanted to bring a true rosé back onto the menu. And
that's great.
So this rosé, surprisingly as well, also picked up a double gold medal and a 96 point score.
Nice.
I'm not surprised.
I believe that was from San Francisco Chronicle.
That's outstanding.
So some funny information here. So when I was creating all of our stuff for our podcast and trying to figure out an email address for us, I chose Texas Vino 95.
Ah.
Because of the point system, double gold.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is that why I didn't even know that?
Yeah, that's exactly why I did it.
I'll be darned. Well, Chris, what a pleasure. What else do you want our listeners, and really ultimately your listeners who are going to listen to this, what else would you like to share with our awesome listeners in several countries? I mean, we've gone global, which is pretty cool.
We actually got 2% listeners in Mexico right now.
Yeah, so it's just pretty crazy.
Did you in Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, everybody else is here in the U.S. or in Germany, but we got 2%
Japan,
now.
Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah, so we're getting worldwide.
Yeah.
Obviously most of our people are here in the U.S.
So what do you want to share with those listeners and with us? We're here to learn as well.
Sure. So there's lots of things we can talk about in terms of what it takes to grow grapes in Texas, how you make the wine in Texas. Because we're a Texas winery and that's our focus, I'm just going to kind of float around those topics for a while.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's cool with you guys.
I think it's fun.
One of the great things about making wine in Texas is Texans love to experiment.
Okay.
They're not afraid to try something new. When I was going through my wine college, my professor said to me early on, you might struggle a little bit in the beginning because you're probably not going to be putting a lot of name brand grapes on the list, like maybe Merlot or Pinot Noir.
Sure.
You can grow Merlot and Pinot Noir in Texas. I would say there's other grapes you could grow in Texas that perform better than those grapes. Mm-hmm. And besides, when you go to the grocery store, you're going to be looking at a wall of Pinot Noir.
Yeah, for always.
You're looking at a wall of Merlot, and you're thinking to yourself, I want to give Texans something new, something unique to try. Because what makes a wine stand out is when you have a unique blend or a unique flavor that they haven't tried before. So in other states, it might be more difficult to experiment like that. We have several people that do visit us a lot from Europe. And those winemakers that come over to visit us from Europe always walk up to me and say, Chris, it's incredible that you can actually experiment with different blends here in Texas because I can't do that where I grow my grapes.
Oh, interesting.
If I do that, I can't put the official domain of origin on my label. I have to kind of go off label with it, so to speak. And so they're surprised at how much we can experiment with here in Texas. So one of the great things about making wine in Texas is that I get to try new grapes that people haven't heard of. They're ancient grapes from Europe, to put a finer point on it, but they're new to Texas, and they're new to Texans.
Okay.
It's like when someone said, hey, have you tried Tito's vodka?
Never Tito's vodka.
You remember? So there used to be a time when no one had heard of Tito's. Right. And he just starts making vodka.
Yeah.
Right. And turns out he's making, Tito's makes great vodka. Right. So the same thing is happening in Texas where people are saying, wow, you know what? I didn't know you could grow Tempranillo in Texas, or I didn't know you could make a beautiful Tannat in Texas. Or what about things like Ionico or Montepulciano or Negro Amaro, which is a beautiful Italian red grape to grow in Texas. We're actually planting many more acres of that going forward.
Oh, very good.
So I have been thrilled that in Texas, I get to experiment with new grapes that people may not have heard of. but that they can fall in love with, and that I'm in a state that gives me the freedom to do that.
Right.
So in Texas, I think one of the big things going forward is going to be blending. A lot of good blends. I've had a lot of great luck with blending like Tempranillo and Ionico, or Tempranillo and Tannat, taking two different regions and actually blending them together.
That's interesting.
Tempranillo obviously being the noble grape of Spain, Ionico being one of the primary grapes there in Italy, in southern Italy, Tannat being a southern French grape. And so with making those new blends, I'm able to create new and unique flavors that people haven't tried before in their wines. Now, sometimes those people don't really know how to pronounce like Tempranillo.
Right.
We have Amarillo, so people go, I like a Tempranillo, which is fine. I don't, whatever, you can call it what you'd like to call it.
I love you,
fine.
Mom.
As long as you enjoy it.
Right.
Right. Or they don't know, is it Tannat or is it Tannat?
Tannat, right? We have a lot of people call it Tannat.
And then you got the Tarragado. Tarragado. Yeah, I mean, I look at it, the minute I see it, I said Talladega.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You're messing with people, man. You got to teach them properly.
Yeah. The Ballad of Ricky and Bobby, the Talladega Nights.
Oh, my gosh.
Very underrated movie, by the way.
Yes, it is.
I agree.
Yeah. And crepes are just as good as pancakes, too.
Yes, by the way.
Yeah.
Now,
So,
I
yeah,
know
it's
that Ionico, you said that a while ago. Who was it we actually tried some Ionico not too long ago?
That was OG, was it?
Was it OG?
I might have been OG.
That's the first time I ever drank an Ionico before, and I was actually kind of shocked by that. I mean, for one, I've only drank Tempranillo, Cabernet Sauvignon, just the typical stuff, and trying something totally new out of the wheelhouse, and I'm like, oh, wow, hello.
That's really the sweet spot for Texas, is to surprise people with new grapes they haven't tried before. My college teachers told me, they said they're worried because there's over 3,000 varieties of wine grapes in the world. And because of really strong marketing, people drink like 7 of them.
Right.
That's amazing.
You know?
Yep.
And so they're worried
7
that
of
those, right. So they're worried that those grape varieties are going to start going extinct if people don't start drinking them, or if they don't learn about them. As a matter of fact, one of our most popular wines that we've made is from the Negro Amaro grape. It's a beautiful, like I said, southern Italian grape, and it tastes very different in Texas than it does when it's grown in its native Italy. In Texas, it gets this beautiful, like chocolate-covered strawberry flavor to it.
Wow.
With really light tannins, and it was one of our favorites that we had in the tasting room. The vineyard that we were buying those grapes from, it changed hands a few times, and then there was some bad weather events that happened, so we don't get grapes from that vineyard anymore. But we're planting new acreage of that out in the high plains, and also some of that acreage here in North Texas,
Nice.
so we can get enough of it. And that grape, no one knew how to pronounce it, no one knew how to say it, so we gave it a brand name. We called it Midnight in the Vineyard.
Oh.
And it became one of our most popular wines.
Wow.
And it didn't even matter to people that they couldn't pronounce it. They just loved it.
Right.
And they had never tasted a wine like that before.
The Negro Amaro?
Yeah, the Negro Amaro. And they were shocked by it. And when we got those grapes the first time, I had actually, I think, only had maybe one bottle of it someplace in my life.
Wow.
And I'd completely even forgotten about the grape. And the grape grower calls us up and he goes, "Hey guys, I've got 5 tons of Negro Amaro. It's beautiful fruit. Would you like it?" We're like, sure, we'll take it. Yeah, we'll experiment with it.
Ah.
We fermented it in open top containers. We punched it down. We bottled it by hand, and it just flew out the door. People loved it.
Really?
So that's a real example of the sweet spot, I think, for Texas going forward is going to be finding those unusual grapes people haven't tried before, putting those grapes out there, letting people taste something new,
Yeah.
taste something unique, maybe come up with a blend of those grapes as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, blends are going to be very important to Texas going forward, I think, just because of the weather issues that we have.
You got me thinking, the combination of a Tempranillo and a Tannat. I've never thought of that
about
combo
that.
before, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, so we
Okay.
make a wine called Divine Red,
Okay.
and it's a Tempranillo blend, and it's usually 75 to 80% Tempranillo, And then sometimes it's the other portion of that is Ionico or it's Tannat.
Wow.
And it just depends on the grapes from that year.
Right.
So our 20 vintage of Divine Red is Tempranillo and Ionico, and our 21 vintage is Tempranillo and Tannat.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'll try that before I leave.
Now, do you have some of that Negro Maro still?
No, I don't.
Okay, we're going to have to catch this podcast now.
sold.
Yeah. We're out of here, Chris.
I know, right? I know. Interview is over. Sorry, guys. Yeah. But we are going to be bringing that back soon.
Good.
So we're having more acreage planted in the high plains. My farm, we're prepping the ground right now for a good acre and a half of it to go in.
Nice.
Yahoo.
And so we're going to be able to get that back on the menu hopefully within the next 2 years.
Great.
That's
Awesome.
one of the hard things about winemaking
Yep.
is that,
It's
and I
the
guess it's something
patience.
to say about Texas as well. You have to have some patience and some staying power.
Yeah.
When you plant a vineyard in California, because they've been making wine for so long, they know pretty much that it's going to be all right in 3 years.
Yeah.
When you get your first harvest in 3 years, you make the wine, you let it age for 2 years. In 5 years, don't worry, it's going to be
Right.
it's going to be very workable, very good wine.
Right.
But in Texas, because we're pioneering, to put vines in the ground, wait 3 years to get your first really good quality harvest.
Right.
Then age it for 2 years in barrel and bottle, and then finally release it to the customers. You've got a 5-year trek to find out if your wine is going to be good, and if that vineyard spot even makes good wine.
Right.
Well, that's where if you don't have both feet in, baby, you're going to burn out because you can't. A lot of people don't have that patience. They don't have that
Right.
disposition to hold tight and wait for that final result.
Well,
Yeah.
I think Andrew at Lonesome Vine says if you want to start a vineyard, you need to have, if you want to make 1.5 in a vineyard, you have to have 2 million to do
Right.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The quickest way to make a small fortune in the wine business is to start with a large fortune.
There
Right.
you go.
Yep.
Awesome.
That's kind of the old saying.
Yep.
Beautiful.
And there's some truth to that.
Yep.
Because it is agriculture. I think people go to the grocery store and they see wine in the bottle, and I think they think it's like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, where you push a button and it must be all automated now. It's not.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
still
I mean, at the
hard
end,
work.
after everything's been processed and stuff, yes, it's automated at the very end.
and during the bottling,
Yeah.
but the growing and the making of the wine
Yep.
is still a manual physical job.
It's an amazing adventure from the very beginning to the very end when we're sipping wine. It's amazing. That's why you should be so proud, though. You and your family, you're doing a great thing here.
Yeah.
You've changed this whole
feel
community.
very blessed.
You're a big part of it.
I feel very blessed.
Well, Chris, I know we're kind of wrapping up a little bit here, but where can people reach out to you? How can they find you? Physical location as well as online. What are some of the great resources you have for folks?
Sure. So our website is edenhill.com.
Okay.
We're on Facebook, Instagram, as usual. You can come to our 2 tasting rooms. We have our main estate tasting room here in Salina.
Yeah.
It's a nice 10-acre property. You can see the vineyard. You can take a tour of the winery and see the barrels like where we're sitting right now.
Yeah.
You can come out to the estate tasting room. You can do a tasting if you'd like. We do parties and events out here as well.
Okay.
Like we do a big bonfire in October that everybody loves.
Oh, that'd be fun. We'll be here.
We're still able to do that here in Salina. We call the
Nice.
fire department and go, don't worry.
Right.
It's just us again.
Precautions taken.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
It's just us again.
And we have our satellite tasting room down in downtown Dallas, down to Farmers Market. And then we also, of course, we sell online through our website. And then we do self-distribution right now to several restaurants around Dallas and Fort Worth. And we also are in several restaurants now in Austin, like
Wow.
in the
Nice.
Cabernet Grill in Fredericksburg.
Can you believe it? That's
You can
really
find
amazing.
our wines down there now too.
That's kind of funny. You actually made mention of that. Is I was down there about a year ago, and I remember seeing before this whole podcast stuff started happening. We were at the steakhouse there, and I saw a bottle of Eden Hill there, and I'm like, that name sounds familiar.
Ah.
And now that you said that, it put 2 to 2 together.
That's really cool. Well, I guess to just kind of wrap it up, I mean, I've listened and I've learned a lot, and
Yeah.
you're a tremendous winemaker and owner. And but can you believe you've reached these levels? And I mean, pat on the back, kudos to your family. I'm very impressed. But boy, did you ever envision that when you first went to Grayson College?
No, I think most of my coworkers as well thought that it was crazy.
Sure. Yeah. What, pray tell, are you thinking, Chris?
All right. But we did know, though, that you can grow great grapes in Texas. We knew that.
Yeah.
And there were so many other strong winemakers in Texas. We knew that we could do it.
Nice.
And Dad has a farming background. He grew up in Kansas on wheat fields and dairy farms.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mom grew up in Northern California, and she has a big gardening background. She's a Collin County master gardener.
Interesting.
So we have a lot of agriculture in our family history. So we felt like we could believe in Texas. We could do it. Texas can do it. And we knew we could prove it.
Well, your confidence has taken you a long way. That's good to have that. And I think I've seen that across the board. You have to have confidence. You put both feet in. You got to have the passion. And more importantly, it's just, why not get out of your comfort zone and do something spectacular for a community and a state and a country?
Yeah, who knows what kind of wine that pear tree in your backyard might make.
The pear tree, there you go. It all started there, right?
Or even this is the grass in my backyard.
We're going to wrap up
some of that gross wine.
First section of our podcast. You have one more thing you want to throw in there?
Yeah, we just need to put, we need to do our little thing.
I was going to say, so we're going to wrap it up real quick. And so, Chris, stay tuned. We're going to use you again here in a minute with your intellect and your experience and your wisdom for some training and teaching. It'll be brief and simple and fun. But real quick, let's talk about our sponsors real quick.
So, we're going to talk about Texas Wine Lover app. Now, how familiar are you with the app?
I've used it a few times.
Yeah,
it's a nice app.
What is your favorite thing about that app?
I like that it's so easy to use.
There you
go. Again, I was in marketing, and actually I was in internet marketing.
Okay.
And so I love it when someone makes a nice app that's very simple and easy to use.
User-friendly, baby.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Amy and Jeff has done a lot of work to that. And Jeff has been doing that long before Amy started doing it. And you got to, I've done app development before, okay? Yeah. You have to have an idea for something, and then you got to bring it to fruition. But you got to have somebody else to be there with you to kind of like bounce an idea off of them and say, yeah, no, that's not going to work, or yeah, that's going to work, or stuff like that. And you always got to be constantly making it better. Mm-hmm. You've got a great app, but what can we do to make it better? And every time I look at that app, there's always something better on there.
Improved.
Yes. And so it's such a great app. And I tell that to everybody that I talk to, especially when they're new to Texas wine and all of that. I tell them, go to this app. Find you a winery you like. There's over 900 wineries on there. Find you something you like. Use that to narrow it down to what you're wanting.
Yep, and we get to visit with them next weekend down in Fredericksburg region. We're going to sit with them and actually have a little podcast with them. It'll be a lot of fun. Yes, that'll be fun.
Yeah. They've got so much knowledge.
They are awesome.
They are.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to bring North Texas wine to them, because they haven't been to some of the wineries up here like Lonesome Vine. They haven't been out there yet. So I want to bring some of that to them next week.
And then our second sponsor, sir?
Is Texas Wine Club.
Yes.
So Texas Wine Club is probably one of my favorite ones of any of the Texas stuff out there, because you can get a little bit of everything from different vineyards in there. And they're trying to spread out to the rest of the Texas so they can get samples from different regions of Texas. Right. And they recently just came up into North Texas to do tastings, blind tastings. And I think they're still going on until like the end of June, I believe.
Yeah, a couple weekends in June they'll be up here.
Yeah. So I'll forward you the information. You should actually go check them out.
Yeah, introduce yourself. They'd love you.
His name is Clay, not Chad.
That's right. Yeah, Clay and Josh. They're actually, I really like those guys a lot. Yes. And they have a beautiful vision. They are going to do very well.
All three of them, like our podcast here, all three of them have some sort of complementary thing that made their business model successful. One's a chef, one did wine, one did just drew a blank on what he did. Marketing. And so with all three of them together, it just kind of came together.
Synergy, baby.
Yeah, synergy.
Yeah.
So,
well, good. Well, yeah, so we have great sponsors. We're glad. But yeah, thank you, Chris, for part one here. We're going to take a break real quick, Will, and we'll be back in a moment.
Yep.
Thanks. You, guys.
Yep.
I'm honored.
Howdy, Texas. This is Erica, Michael's wife, and a fellow wine enthusiast. I hope you are enjoying the We Know Texas Vino podcast as much as I am. Will and Michael are doing a fabulous job highlighting our local wineries and tapping into the knowledge of local growers. Fill up your glass as we dive into our educational segment for this episode. Salute.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We've had a great time out here with Chris, and we're just excited to be at Eden Hill Winery and Vineyard.
Yes.
And we've learned so much, and award-winning vineyard and wines. That's pretty cool. But real quick, we're going to do an educational portion here, Will, and I'm excited about it. I guess this is my week. We're going to have some fun with that. But you want to talk about maybe some of our activity we have going on. So what's going on with all that?
So what
with our online take two? Didn't you want to review that real quick?
Good. No, we're good.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, we had that kind of that moment that just kind of went duh for a second.
That's why you have notes over there. But so our online presence. So what's going on? How can people reach out to us real quick?
So you can find us on Facebook at We Know Texas Vino.
Beautiful. And
very soon, like hopefully by the end of this week, I'll actually have it up and running.
Okay.
We Know TexasVino.wine.
That's cool.
And then,
Coolest
of course,
website.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I mean, I'll spend a lot of time doing this.
I saw the template, and it's going to be very attractive, very classy, Chris.
Yes.
Very classy website.
We're not classy at all, but it's going to be the site's
The
going to be
website's
classy.
going to be classy.
And then, of course, you can find us on any major podcasting application out there.
Absolutely. That's
So
awesome.
make sure you go out and give us a 5-star rating also, by the way.
Yeah, we're grateful.
And give us any kind of feedback. We love feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
well, we're super grateful. So we're here with Chris today, and we're going to do a little learning. How about that? I think
Yes.
it's always good. But right now we're drinking a phenomenal wine. And Chris, you introduced this wine earlier in the episode, which is cool, and it's a rosé. And one of my questions I've had for like over a month and a half, and I've always wanted to find someone to answer this, so you're in big trouble, mister, is what is a rosé and how do you make it?
That is the $1 million question.
Okay, tell us.
I only got $5.
Well, you might need to pour yourself some more rosé then while we talk. Right? Yeah, so rosés are one of the hardest wines to make because a winemaker has so many different styles to choose from.
Right.
There's so many different ways that you can take it. Do you make it sweet? Do you make it dry? Do you make it with a deep, dark color? Do you make it with a very light, almost white wine style color?
Yes.
Is it a blend? Is it a single varietal? Which grapes do you use?
Wow.
How ripe do you let it get in the vineyard before you pick it? All these different dials you have to turn as a winemaker. So let's start with the 3 most popular ways to make a rosé.
All right.
The traditional way is to take whole cluster red grapes. In our case, it would be Tempranillo. In other cases, it might be Sangiovese or a different kind of red grape. You load those grapes, whole cluster. That means the berries are not pulled off the stems yet. You put them whole cluster into your grape press. You press that juice, and then you just ferment the juice away from the skins.
Interesting.
That only gives the juice about maybe 2, maybe 3 hours of skin contact, because the color in a rosé comes from the red skin of the red fruit.
Okay.
So the longer that rosé sits in contact with the skin, you're going to get a darker and darker color.
Okay.
But you're also going to pick up more tannin.
From the skins.
And you're going to get more, it's going to become more and more like a red wine. And the goal of a rosé is not to be a red wine, it's to be crisp and refreshing. It's to give you a little hint of tannin that you would get from red fruit, but not so much that it overpowers the wine. So whole cluster pressing allows you to make, I feel, one of the best styles of rosé.
Okay.
A very light rosé that's crisp. You get the acid you need, but you get a little bit of color from the 2 or 3 hours of skin contact in the press.
Perfect.
And then you get just a hint, the barest hint of tannin in with that rosé.
Interesting. And didn't you tell me that this is kind of a European tradition? Is that
Yes.
you kind of went with that mantra, that mode, because you appreciated that and you wanted to bring that to Texas and you wanted to do something unique with that?
That's right. So those kinds of traditional methods are going to yield a rosé that is almost very salmon in color.
Okay.
Extremely light pink.
Salmon. I like. Okay, look at that real quick, Will. And
Yeah.
that's a great description of that.
Yeah, that
Beautiful.
is.
Okay.
And you really only get that color when you're doing that traditional process where you just press the juice immediately. It takes, like I said, 2 to 3 hours in the press to get the juice out. So during that time, that juice is in contact with the skins. And then some bits of skin get into the tank
Okay.
after pressing anyway.
Sure.
That settles out to the bottom.
Okay.
The second way to make rosé is to do what's called bleeding the wine, or saignée. So in a saignée approach, you're picking your harvest. You've got this big, beautiful red wine you're making, but maybe that red wine needs a little more power. It needs a little more depth. So you're going to take some juice out of the tank, and that's going to leave the remaining red wine a bit more concentrated.
I was going to say that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you're not removing the skins,
Right.
you're keeping the skins with that juice. You're
Yeah.
just lowering the volume of juice in the tank, right? Okay. So that will make that red wine a bit more dense, a bit more intense. But then what do you do with the juice you draw off? It's not salmon colored. It's a bit darker color of a rosé, but it's not fully fermented yet. So it's not a full red wine. Maybe it's 2 or 3 bricks in and you draw the juice out. So that wine then will be fermented separately in a tank or a barrel. And then that bled wine, or that saignée, the French term for that process, is what makes the rosé. Now, in that situation, you might think to yourself, did the winemaker mean to make a rosé? Or was that kind of like an afterthought? He thought, that red wine I'm making just isn't quite dense enough. So let me just bleed some juice off. Okay. So there's a debate about that. So I'm going to try to not get myself into trouble in the winemaking world.
Right.
But we'll go ahead and say they planned it that way just to be on the safe side. But sometimes it's like, well, it's an easy way to make rosé. You just bleed some juice off.
Interesting.
And then the third method traditionally is to blend, right? You make a red wine and then you make a white wine, and you blend a very small portion of red wine into the white wine. That gives you a little tannin, a little pink color. You still get the crispness and the acid from the white wine because it's a blend. So traditional rosé makers would say the best rosé technique is to make rosé with intent. Don't make it an afterthought.
Right.
And they would kind of think like bleeding the wine or maybe a post-blend might be a bit of an afterthought. So they prefer to say, if you're going to do it, then go all in. Take your whole cluster fruit, press it, just ferment the juice, leave the skins behind, and make it the traditional way. So
interesting.
When we said, how are we going to make our rosé here, I said, I want to do it the traditional way.
Very nice.
I want to see if Texas can make a rosé as good as Provence.
Interesting.
As good as France.
And it's amazing.
It is amazing. So here's a question, and I don't ever say there's a dumb question. The only dumb question is when you don't ask. When I first started drinking wines and seeing rosés and stuff, I was thinking they would take a white wine and red. Let's start this over again. A white grape and a red grape, and put them all in the fermentation tank together. Let them ferment together, and then they get equal amounts apart to get that light color that you want.
Sure.
And then that's what you got your rosé. After doing more research and listening to you and have read some other articles and stuff, I found that's really not the way they do it.
What you just described as a second-grade coloring book. Okay, I mean, give me a break. That's so cute. I love it, Will. I adore you. But it's amazing.
But it is an interesting process. I don't know if that's actually a really way of making a rosé also, or you can do it that way, or actually you
can do it that way. So what you're describing is, well, let me say it this way. So I'm talking about the three most common ways to make a rosé.
Okay.
And then, of course, the first way, just whole cluster pressing, is the most traditional way.
Okay.
But in reality, when you look back across the history of winemaking, the very first wines made from grapes were almost always rosés. Because what would happen is the farmer would go to his field and he would take all the grapes at the same time. Many thousands of years ago, they weren't really thinking about, well, Cabernet grows the best over here and Chardonnay grows the best over there. They were just poor farmers and they wanted wine, and they would grow all the grapes together. And when it was harvest time, when it was time to go get the wheat and everything else, you got the grapes too. And you put all the grapes, red and white, into a giant clay jar, and then you put that in the ground
for a minute,
and you seal it with beeswax and you bury it. And then you come back a month later and dig it up, and you have wine.
That's amazing.
Because at that point, Mother Nature is making the wine because it's just fermenting the grapes naturally under the ground. But what that does, though, is it does yield a rosé because you've got white grapes and red grapes together in that clay jar.
Sorry about that. I guess that was the case.
So the most ancient form of winemaking is actually rosé.
Wow. That's phenomenal.
We just learned that you can make the best rosé of your life if you do whole cluster pressed red grapes.
Okay.
And not blend it with a white wine.
So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go buy me a clay pot and a bunch of beeswax, and dig a hole in my backyard.
That's beautiful. He's going old school. Yeah, we encourage you to go back a couple decades and learn from these great people.
Invite me over, man, because I want to taste it.
Yeah, me too.
My curiosity is having that wine, the grapes fermented inside there. If it doesn't release that clay pot into it also.
Yes. So there's a lot of winemakers now re-experimenting with the clay pot method. They're not burying it in the ground, but they're aging their. I know, can take some of the fun out of it, right? They are aging their red wines in clay amphora like they would a barrel. Yeah.
That's fascinating too. Well, that's interesting, and we do takeaways at the end of the show. Easily, my takeaway today is learning about that rosé process that you're doing, and I'm tasting right now. It is spectacular. And Will, when you get to that point, I hope you follow the same process.
Well, I still sitting in my very early stages of going into winemaking and stuff. I do have a notebook that I have ideas about winemaking, because I do sit down and I read and listen to you winemakers, how y'all do y'all's wines and stuff like that. And I just take notes, and I have ideas to make wine, and I want to be the most unique winemaker out there. In fact, actually, I told Michael and Erica, I said, when I start making wine, I don't want to be just a no-name winemaker. I want to be a gold medal winemaker.
Sure. You can be.
Yeah, you will be. You can, you will, you shall.
Yeah.
Do it. Well, Chris, thank you so much. That is very educational. I'm very impressed with that. And your knowledge is just extraordinary. I feel like I've learned a ton today. So I want to thank you and your family, in particular, Clark and Linda and Wendy and Chanaka. Chanaka. Thank you, Chanaka. And also your staff. They were very friendly when we arrived here. So thank you for that whole crew. And we're just grateful. But thanks for spending some time with us today. This has been great, Chris.
It's been wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And so we were going to wrap it up real quick. Will, takeaway today, my friend.
Man,
that's a tough one. There's so much information.
There's so much information here. I mean, I learned so much.
Yeah.
And it never fails. Every time we do one of these, I always learn something.
That and the people we're meeting are just extraordinary. And I'm just so proud of them.
And there's always the same commonality in everything: helpful, friendly, and community. That's the word. Community. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's
the word.
Yeah. So my takeaway is, again, the rosé was fascinating. I've always been curious about that. Yes. I love what Chris and his family is doing here at Eden Hill, and I'm just really, really impressed with that. It was a great takeaway for the day. So a couple quotes real quick. We'll wrap it up. So my quotes of the week are as follows.
So he does these quotes.
Yes.
Some of them are amazing, and some of them you had to look at him like, really?
Well, I have a deep one. He inspired me today. Chris inspired me. So the first one is not inspiring. It's not deep. But it says here, if I go missing, please put my face on a bottle of wine so my friends will know. I love it. And then the second one is a little deeper, and it's novinophobia. Novinophobia, the fear of running out of wine. Okay, and so those are my quotes for the week.
I don't have that fear at all.
No, well, you don't, because you have quite the stock going on there. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Yes. I love it out here. I could easily camp out here and move in for sure and help out this great family. But any final thoughts there?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure being here. And for We Know Texas Vino, another episode, we're grateful.
Yeah, this is Will.
Cheers. This is Michael.
Have a good one.
Cheers, y'all.